So I just had a question on your thoughts on if we need more gun control in the country or not. I'm very pro protecting America and the citizens that live in it. And so I think that we should have more gun control because there's a lot of school shootings that happen, as we mentioned. And, I just think it would do a lot to protect the people. And I think the Second Amendment also qualifies that we should have regulations for guns. I wanted to know your thoughts on that.
Sure. Do you think gun ownership is a right or a privilege?
I think it's a right, but it comes with responsibilities.
Okay, tell me more.
Well, I think that there should be things in place, things like red flag laws and things like that. The AG just approved Mel Gibson to get his gun rights back, even though he had a domestic violence charge. So, I don't think the people that commit these violent crimes should be able to buy guns and things like that. And I think we should have red flag laws in place to make sure that those violent criminals aren't getting guns.
Okay, so let's go. So tell me, in your perfect world, what would constitute a red flag?
Just things like, we can look into any kind of medication and things like that that can affect someone's...
That could be dangerous, right? That could be there's a lot of vets that come home from war and that are on a lot of medication. A lot of vets could have their weapons taken away.
Well, I'm not necessarily saying... Bless you. Bless you.
Thank you. It's the pollen or something. Thank you.
I'm not necessarily saying, it's mainly to prevent, future shootings and things like that, and also... putting in place things like a federal registry so that we know, the types of guns that people have. And, it would just essentially be a federal registry that shows these are the guns that this person has, in case a cop has to go on something like a domestic call. That's the most dangerous call they can go on. So,
yeah, I can see you're coming after this from a good perspective. Let me ask one other question. What would you say is the ultimate and final purpose of the Second Amendment?
I think it's self-defense against a tyrannical government, which...
We agree. Sure. Great. Keep going.
Well, but I think within the Second Amendment, it also implies that we have high regulations in the first four words.
Sort of.
Of it.
Well-regulated militia actually meant well-armed, but that's a separate issue. But
well, how do you know? You're interpreting what the Founding Fathers
Well, they said it in the Federalist Papers, right? So it's not just me, but also in the Heller decision, in the 5-4 decision, that said that gun ownership was a right. This was a hotly debated thing.
But do you disagree? Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Do you disagree with the idea of like a federal registry like that?
Oh, without a doubt. The only reason you'd want to register the guns is if you want to confiscate them.
Well, or to make sure that people like officers of the law are protected and know what they're going into. A domestic...
That's a good argument,
right?
To your credit. I will try to make a better argument where the problem of the government knowing where every gun is would then lead itself towards mass confiscation. And I would agree with you, a well-armed citizenry is the greatest protectorate of liberty and freedom in this country.
Even though the Army has things like drones and tanks and things like that outarm, citizens that have...
Yes and no. We've seen it in several instances where at least a citizen... That's a good argument, but I would say a little flawed. Where the citizens are able to protect themselves in some ways, it's a much harder population to control.
I understand, but so you think a federal registry would infringe on the rights?
Potentially. I think there's no good argument, other than potential... I ascribe to the government bad motives and bad intentions when it wants to infringe more on these types of freedoms and liberties.
Well, I understand. I just personally don't see it as an infringement because, like we just said, and I think we agreed that owning a gun is a right. However, yes. I think it was responsibilities. But also I wanted to ask, is voting a right or is that a privilege?
Well, it is a right, and so felons can get their rights back, right? And so, but rights can be suspended or delayed. And we both agree with that. So, for example, like somebody in prison doesn't get guns.
Right, no, of course.
Somebody in prison doesn't have the same free speech rights that you might have.
Right, but what's the first thing that you have to do if you want to vote in this country? You have to register, right? Mm-hmm. So it's a federal registration to be able to vote in this country. So why not, and we can agree that, keeping safe and, keeping our elections to where people who shouldn't vote aren't voting is, that's keeping America safe because we don't want people who
That's a fair point. I would say there's something, there's a technical difference between a voter registration roll and a gun registration
Right, guns
roll.
are much more dangerous.
Well, also, but guns, in many different ways, they would go after the guns a lot more than, the voter registration roll.
Well, how do we know, though?
My worldview comes out of one in the 20th century, where almost every totalitarian government went after the guns first. And the confiscation of guns then leads into the erosion of freedom and liberty.
Right, but wouldn't you say in the 20th century, as you just said, that the disparity between the technology that citizens had to protect themselves compared to what the military had, wouldn't you say that there was a much smaller disparity as opposed to what we see nowadays?
Somewhat. I think that's a fair point.
So
I'm acknowledging that's a fair point.
Okay.
But do you see my perspective as well?
No, I do understand.
That an armed citizenry Also, it says shall not be infringed, so we have to kind of wrestle with those two things
Right, but
simultaneously.
so if it's just a semantics argument, then to that point,
Well, it's not. I mean, semantics is meaning. That's literally what the word means. But
right, but
so,
you're saying because it says shall not be infringed, we can't do anything.
No,
Does
no,
that
I'm
mean,
saying,
does that
though,
mean
that
voting rights can be
I'm
infringed?
saying
Because it doesn't say it cannot be infringed.
I'm saying I err on the side that more government regulation around guns means that they'll try to take good people's guns away, which then results in less global or let's just say national freedom and liberty.
I understand, but wouldn't you say that that more guns can potentially lead to more danger and less guns?
Yes
would
and
lead to less
no.
danger?
I mean, there's plenty of evidence to show that states that have more. So, like, if you take Houston and Chicago, about comparable populations, Houston actually has warmer weather, which means potentially more gang violence. They have about half, if not even less, the amount of homicides per year than in Chicago. Chicago has much stricter gun laws than Houston, like incredibly strict gun laws.
I understand, but I'm also, well, I think part of what plays into that is the gun laws that are around those cities. They're a lot more lenient than those cities themselves. So I think, I'm not saying that's entirely the cause of it, but I'm saying
I've heard that my whole life, so yeah.
Right, but I'm basically just talking about preventing people that have committed crimes such as domestic violence. I know I mentioned Pam Bondi gave Mel Gibson his rights to purchase a gun again, even though he pled guilty to a battery domestic violence charge in 2011, and yet now he is able to purchase a gun again, which I disagree with because he committed a violent crime. I mean, do you disagree with that personally?
No, I mean, I don't know the details of the case, but I think I've met Mel Gibson. I think he should be able to own a gun. I mean, like
just off of speaking to him though, even though with his
yeah,
criminal
I mean,
history. And
I don't.
everything?
Again, I don't know all the details. Do I think that the idea of taking his rights away because of something that happened that I don't know all the details about 14
well,
years
pled
ago?
Guilty to it though.
Again,
I mean,
I find that to be a little bit of an infringement on basic rights.
even though he literally
Again, I
committed
don't know the
violence against
details
his life.
around that, but I guess we're getting to a place where do you think anyone that's convicted of violent crime should be able to own guns again?
No, not at
Oh,
all.
wow,
If they're
okay.
committing a violent crime, absolutely not. I think we should protect people in America, which I think you agree with, and I think
Yeah,
that
but
is how we protect America.
that's a balance. Are we going to really say the federal government is going to protect us from ourselves when it comes to guns?
No, I mean it's less about the federal government taking away guns and more just allowing them to protect their citizens. And it's not about getting rid of guns. I'm a gun owner myself. I go hunting.
I'm
I was
not
on a
doubting any of that.
competitive
What
team.
state
but,
would you say has the gun laws that are the most appealing to your worldview?
I don't know specific state laws, if I'm being completely honest with you. But
something to think about.
But I'm speaking, even just the federal registry itself, I think that would protect, a lot of officers of the law. Like I said, when they go on domestic calls, that's the most dangerous call that an officer
So
of the law
there is
can go on.
there's an informal registry, not a formal one. Just so you know, gun dealers are supposed to report
Right,
gun,
but do you
gun
really think
sales.
that they do all the time, then?
No, of course not. Obviously, I mean,
Right,
I
so
live in
wouldn't the
reality.
federal
but
registry eliminate that problem then?
again, I would go back to a formal registry. You register in order to confiscate. It is a prerequisite towards confiscation.
Isn't that just a slippery slope argument, though? If you give
Well,
one
it's
thing,
not.
then
It's
another
a,
thing's
it's a
going to go?
historical argument, right? We see that throughout totalitarian dictatorships throughout the 20th century, where if you want to take the weapons away, you first ask for a collection of all the items that you then want to collect. But I could see you're coming after this in good faith. I tend to be on a much more libertarian side, even though I'm not libertarian, where we actually need looser gun laws because I think that
Looser gun laws?
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean,
what
especially in
way?
states like Chicago and Illinois, where it's very basic Second Amendment rights. So I'll give you a great example.
Okay.
In a state like Rhode Island or New York,
Right.
it could take a woman upwards of 30 days to get a gun. So let's say a man wants to actually do harm to her, and she gets threats, and the police won't intervene. I think she should be able to get a gun that afternoon to protect herself.
I understand that.
So like
but
in that case, I think that gun laws should be looser.
I understand.
I think
in,
like
in that regard, I do agree with you.
cool. So like
Absolutely.
that would be
but-
an instance of that. And I also will go back to this idea of red flag laws. We have seen case after case of it being abused, of veterans having their weapons taken away because of fake accusations and let's just say faulty accusations, saying that they're mentally unbalanced, so on and so forth.
But do you think that they could investigate cases like that and see if there aren't any medications? I mean, a lot of these
They can.
antidepressants can change your brain
For
chemistry.
sure.
And
And some of
alter
it, though,
you.
is they take the guns away first and they ask questions after. It's a difficult, very, I don't want to say gray area, but edge part of the law where I tend to, and a respectable position, respect to you, I tend to err on the side of it is a right. The government screws up more than it does correct in this specific portion. And the downside to having more guns is far better than the downside of having only the government have guns.
Okay, so I agree with Charlie. I know so many people will be against it, but coming from a country where we are not allowed to have gun, or before you have the license to have gun, you have to go through a lot. You see, unlike American, you can easily walk up to where you want to get your gun, at least have a license for it, you understand? The process of having a gun in America, I feel, is way easier than my country. And to me, I see it as very bad, Every household need to have a gun to defend themselves. You understand? Because what the level of insecurity in Nigeria, I'm speaking for Nigeria now, okay, is so much because people know that the houses they are going to, they can't defend themselves. That is why the insecurity is much. Because if you are coming to my house and you know that I have a gun, you'll be very careful. But because they know that it's kind of illegal to have a gun in Nigeria, so now the insecurity is much. They can, go to a particular town, unalive everybody, and nobody will hold them accountable. Like, I mean, a full town, like, or let's say a village, unalive everyone. But let's say if 15 households have a gun in that village, they can defend themselves or defend their village. But because it is illegal or the process of having it is very difficult, like, people now, I don't know how they get their weapon. Terrorists now do that, unalive so many people. And because they know they are helpless, they can't defend themselves. And the government we are hoping on that would defend us, like, they are nowhere to be found. So this is what Charlie is saying. Charlie is saying people need to be able to defend themselves because I believe the government can not always be there. And I've given the example or the reason why I agree with Charlie, you understand? But I know people are misusing the opportunity in America because I've seen several videos and all of people, misusing the opportunity. And someone can just annoy you and next thing you're pulling out a gun. Instead of resolving issues, you are abusing the right of having a gun. And I think that is where this guy is coming from. Even if he claimed he owned a gun for hunting, but still, he believes the government should regulate it. I see where he's coming from, you understand? Because you don't give driving license to everyone simply because they tell you they know how to drive. You have to make sure they pass their road test. And, okay, in Africa, they pass their road test, and they pass their driving test, they pass their eyesight test, and so many other things before you know they are fit to have a gun. And I believe Americans don't just give out gun to random people. You pass through tests before you get a gun. And I wish they can maybe add psychological tests to it, at least know how people think, if they are mentally okay to handle those weapons. You understand? Or if they have had any issue of violence before, at least those are tests or things you need to consider before giving them a gun. But with the fact that Charlie is saying people should own a gun to defend themselves, I totally agree with that. Because of the country I'm coming from, you can disagree with me, but I side with Charlie. So let me know what you think in the comment section. If it is your first time visiting the channel, click on the subscribe button. Thanks for watching and remain blessed.